Welcome to Eastlake. We are an inclusive faith community dedicated to the free search for truth and meaning, seeking to live out a more just and life-giving spirituality in the modern world. We see faith as less about doctrines and dogmas demanding total agreement, but a life to be lived, enjoyed, and given away to others. What unites us is a growing awareness that life is a gift and love is the point. We welcome the entire human family, regardless of race, age, creed, physical abilities, marital or economic status, gender identity, or sexual orientation. So if you are curious and have come to see, if you are tired and have come to rest, if you are grateful and have come to share, if you are journeying and have come to grow, if you are wounded and have come to heal, if you are joyful and have come to shine, welcome home. Today, we hear from Brit Barron as she continues our series, The Way I See It. Please check the description for links to our quarterly Spotify playlist and guided meditation.
Well, hey Eastlake, it's Kristen and Peter, and we're here with Brit Barron today. Yay!
Hello! Happy to be here.
We're so glad to have you. I was saying to Peter before we started this call that the online thing has been going okay. Like, we get this content, people send their videos, and it's kind of just been going. But your message was the first one where I was like, man, I wish we were in person. Because
oh, I know.
It was so good. It was so funny. I was laughing out loud by myself.
Yep, yeah. I was too.
Which is really weird to like tell a joke, you know, when you're just like alone in your like home office and you're like, right?
Just hoping somebody laughs.
Yeah, like, oh gosh, who knows? Who knows what that reaction was?
Well, I gotta add, I wrote down my 3 favorite jokes because that was how funny I found the message. For those of you who are watching and you're like, I didn't watch the talk, I'm only doing the interactive follow-up. There were 3 moments when you talked about 96 pictures, the beginning of social media.
Oh, yes, yes.
Social media started with you seeing 96 pictures of my vacation, and now it's curated pictures of lunch, and now it's here's my political views, and if you disagree with me, I'm going to banish you from my life. I love that. The other one that I love so much was you talked about how like we freak out with these little things when we get like, we need external validation so much. And you talked about how my boss sent me an email with a period instead of an exclamation point. I'm worried I'm
getting fired. That's it. It's
I
over.
just love that so much because I have that experience. Anyways, it's so great. And then the shoe in the dryer was my favorite metaphor at the end. Anyways, I just wanted to let you know your jokes resonated with at least me and Kristen. So.
Okay, it's good to know it hit with someone, you know, just really a really cold audience when it's just yourself. You can see yourself on the screen. You're like, isn't that hilarious?
It's the worst. And also, because when speakers would come to town, Peter and I and the leadership team stuff, we would get to like hang a little bit and go out to lunch. And the lunch with you and Sammy and I think her brother, it was so much fun. You were one of you left and we were like, they're so great. We wish it could have been longer. So
we will be back.
Okay, good. Well,
things will return.
Well, we missed you guys, but we're so thankful for your time. And just to start out by saying, I think I already said this, but I loved your message. I think you did exactly what we were asking for, which is, what are you thinking of right now? Like, what keeps coming back to you? And what does that say about how you ascribe meaning to your life and your values and what you're trying to do? And so thank you. Thanks for putting that together. I thought it was so good. I wanted to start off by talking about just the general idea that you said about how have I allowed myself to let other people's voices have authority in my life instead of my own.
Yeah.
And I wanted to ask you, how do you think that starts? Like, is it a slow burn where we stop trusting ourselves? Is it the internet itself where all these voices are now available? But how do you think it starts where we give authority to voices besides our own?
Yeah. I don't know. I think it's kind of individual. Like there's like a process, I think, in which you need those voices, right? Like if you're 6, you know, you need someone to be like, this is who you are. Like I'm gonna tell you, and I'm gonna help shape that. And then this like pass off where it should become our own. I think personally, and I think there's a lot of people who probably resonate with this. A lot of that came from like church, right? Where it was like, okay, well now you listen to this pastor or this youth pastor or this book even, but I'll tell you what it says, or there's always this disconnection. And so I feel like a lot of us were like primed even like before the internet, like, you know, to hear someone's opinion and be like, you're doing good or you're not doing good, or you're meeting the measure or you're not. And so now I feel like we're in this situation where if we haven't undone some of that original priming, wherever we picked it up from, we are currently in like this amplified state of it, where it's just like adding on and on and on. But I definitely think it's kind of individual. I think there are probably a lot of people who resonate with some of it coming from some type of religious baggage, because I think that's a fair amount of people, right? That have some experience that like, no, it's not. Listen to me. I'll tell you what is right, what you should be feeling. And so we got that priming early on.
I have a follow-up to that, Kristen. I'm curious, as you think of that, Brit, this tendency that we have to essentially give other people authority, right? As opposed to kind of this checking in with yourself and trusting your instinct or trusting some of your intuition. Do you think that the externalization of that authority is like a shortcut? It's like maybe less work for people than having to go through the process of like thinking about what you want. I think about like in my discussions with my wife about big decisions. Like I feel like sometimes I can talk myself into anything. And so like I can talk myself into, we should do this way, or we should go that way, or we should go this way. And so because I don't really want to like be on the hook for my decision, I'm like, what do you guys think? And then if it goes great, then I'm like, told you. And if it goes wrong, I feel like you guys are idiots. You told me to do this. Like it feels like a little bit of a shortcut to not having to take responsibility. Is that kind of what you're saying? Or are you saying something different?
Yeah, both and. I think it's, I tell them all the time, I'm like, if there was a part of my mind that just could get around every single issue with fundamental religion, which there isn't, but I understand the appeal, right? If you live in a world where it's like, hey, Peter, I'm going to tell you exactly what you need to do and how you need to do it. And if you do that, you don't have to worry about whether or not you're doing a good job. You don't have to worry about how to make meaning of your life. Don't worry. It's A, B, C, and you're good. Here's how to be a good person. Like, I get the appeal of that because it does take away. It's way harder to be like, whoa, I need to, oh my gosh, why did I say that? Why do I feel, okay, what's in me? Wait, should I be? That's way harder. It's better. I think it's more rewarding, more gratifying. I think it makes a fuller, wholer people. But absolutely, it's better to be like, oh, I didn't really have to think about it. They told me, you know?
Yeah.
Like that's appealing.
Yeah. I certainly feel like the transition out of some of that prescriptive, like, here's how to live your life, here's how to live the good life, is essentially what I was raised with and what we were raised with, different versions potentially, but losing that is a little bit of like, you're falling and like, and I have to find grasping onto things and deciding what's helpful and what's not. So it's helpful.
Yeah.
Okay. This one I tried to answer myself and I couldn't really get there. So I love, and we've said this at Eastlake when you talked about humans are fundamentally born good.
Yeah.
And how that is such a change in perspective from an evangelical perspective where we're fundamentally born flawed and have to have something save us. And you said we have the opportunity to return to that good. And I guess my question is where are we if we have to return to it? Like,
yeah,
where are we returning from? Where do you think it is that, what is the opposite of like being in that state of fundamentally good?
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good question. I don't know that we ever lose that goodness. I guess in returning to it, I would, when I say that, I mean in returning to ourselves. So I think where we go when we have to return to it is we go away from self. So we go to other people, other things. We go outside of that. And I think that's when, right, obviously, I think humans are fundamentally born good, but there's obviously not good things in the world, right? And I think when we go away from self and we are able to like disassociate with that being, with that goodness, with that thing, right, then waters get murky. And I think we've all felt what that feels like. And so I think, where do we go? I don't know, away. And when we return to it, I see that as like returning to self, to say like, okay, there is something divine and beautiful and good in me. And I get to go back to that, and I get to trust that, and I get to listen to that. When we go away from that and we say, well, I'm only going to go based on what Peter says, or I'm going to go for the what the masses say, or I'm going to go for this other thing, right? But we always have an opportunity to return. And I think that means, not a big sort of like, we were here, then we go there. It's a reminder like of who we are and have been and will always be.
Yeah. I do think it, like what you just said, it's just a reminder. I think returning to good is more just, I think, reminding ourselves that we're not lost. We're not too far gone, that we already have that inside of us.
Yeah. I like that language better. Even though I said it, I'm like, yeah.
But I do think that's hard to remember these days, and especially when you're scrolling on your phone and find yourself kind of lost in this murkiness, like you said. Just a reminder of who you really are to yourself can help you get there.
And that takes like intention, and I think intention is hard to come by when there's so many. I don't know, I was just telling someone the other day, I'm like, do you remember being bored? Like I just literally like remember being bored as a kid, and then just like sitting there. I had like strict parents, so we like only could watch TV on the weekends, and we didn't have a lot of things to distract us. So I just remember sitting there, like I have distinct childhood memories of sitting in the yard and being like, this blade of grass looks weird. This one looks different than that one. Like, because you're just like, I'm so bored that I'm just like, I'm bored enough to now begin to notice things that I wouldn't have noticed, right? And I think that's an important part of humanity. I think it's really weird that we don't get bored anymore. We don't get lost anymore. Like I don't know. It's just, right? Intention is a lot harder to come by, I think.
That's so interesting. We don't get lost anymore.
Right. There's not a lot like, they're like, remember I was telling us my nephew's 16. And so he's learning how to drive. And I told him, I was like, Dominic, when I was 16, I got my license. I mean, my friends didn't, like, one of our friends had a cell phone. But I'm like, other than her, like, we would all call and we'd say, like, hey, tomorrow meet me at the mall at 5 in front of, like, Tilly's. And then you go to Tilly's at 5, and if she's not there, you're like, either something very tragic happened or she's late. I have no idea. You just, like, hope she was there. Like, and there's so much just, like, random mystery about life that, you won't ever. I'm like, now you can check her location or text her, or there's a million different things. And so when so many things are so readily available, I think pausing long enough to remember something or putting intention behind something, you got to work a little harder for it.
All right, it sounds like you're saying that because there's so much how technology, the internet has changed, like the experience of being human, that like it has maybe informed more of our autopilot. So like we have, maybe it highlights, there's way less like
Yeah.
Spontaneity. Whereas in our childhood, we had a lot more of that. I'm also I'm a millennial, born at like one of the first ones, right? So I had life before the internet. We got dial up at 12, and then was life after that. But I learned to drive too without a cell phone, right? So my parents were like, "Here's curfew, be back by then," right? And like check in if you want to change plans from a landline. Like that's hopefully nobody's on the internet, right?
Yes, exactly. I think we're called geriatric millennials. No, no,
Totally.
yeah.
That's fair. It's fair.
I'm like 2 years older, so I'm not millennial. I'm in like the weird between.
That middle.
Yes. I will say we've been doing this thing with my kids called Pajama Drive, where they get in their pajamas and we get in the car and we alternate. Everybody gets to say turn left, turn right in different order. We get to a stop sign or a stoplight. And it's kind of crazy. We end up in like places we've never been before because we have a 4-year-old and a 5-year-old telling us which way to go, and they love it. And it's like, I mean, and then
that's so fun. I want to do that.
Last time we did that, we ended up like 40 minutes away from our house. And then I was like, hey, okay. It's time. And we had to like plug in the phone and have the map come up and like get us back home. But it's a really weird feeling to not know where you are.
Yes.
I have a question on that, on the fundamentally good, Kristen, before we move maybe to the next topic.
Yeah.
Do you feel like, Brit, that you have, like, did you have to like process through that as like there's evidence to the contrary, is all I'm saying, right? There's evidence that would suggest that maybe the people aren't all born good. And I'm not saying that I don't hold that belief, because I think it's a beautiful way to live, and I think it's a better way to live is probably maybe the way I would describe it. Do you feel like you grew up thinking humans are flawed because of, religious roots, humans are fundamentally broken, and you had to consciously choose that? Or do you feel like there's more evidence to suggest that people are actually fundamentally good, and like people are just kind of being negative, or finding like all the flaws in humanity and using that as evidence to why they are essentially all humans are born evil? I'm curious kind of how you arrived at that conclusion, and why do you think it matters for coming back to yourself? Like, why is that important in your talk, I guess?
Yeah.
It's a two-part question, I guess.
I think, so the first part of your question, I would say both. I definitely grew up with an evangelical lens that said, like, you're born bad and you have to, I mean, then it got tricky because it was like, you have to accept Jesus into your heart, and then you're still kind of bad, but then hopefully just less. I don't know. That's where it started to break down a little bit. But so there was definitely undoing of that. And then the second, I think, there is evidence. In both and, right? So in undoing some of those ideologies of the way I grew up, I think it was important to reclaim some of them, right? To re-understand them, to reimagine them, to say, like, okay, this is the text that I was given, this is the Bible. Oh, it actually doesn't say that. It actually says, like, oh, we were created and it was good. And I'm like, oh, that confirms my natural predisposition. And then, I think obviously there's evidence for whatever you want to have evidence for. And I think something that's been interesting to me as an adult, right, is how many situations you find yourselves in where, if we're talking heroes and villains, and you're not the hero in that situation, and you are able to process through, how did I get here? Okay, does this mean I'm not good anymore? That's something I process through a lot, right? Like, when I was propagating these things on a stage and making sure, was I still good? Was my goodness true about me then? And if it was, then that means that the goodness is true about, people doing that now. And I think why it's so important in returning to yourself is because if you can't, if it's not true about you, it's not true about anyone, right? Like, if you can't, I can't be like, well, I'm not good, but Kristen is. Like, that's not true. That's fake, right? Like, if it's not true about me, it's not true about someone else. And I think being honest with ourselves about the roles we have played in our life that vary from good, bad, whatever, I think gives me like a picture of humanity of like, oh, we have, again, I'll steal your language, but we always have opportunities to remember that we can do this. And that doesn't mean that we like lock into that and then it never changes and we never are hurt and act out of that hurt and we never are traumatized and act out of that trauma. Like, it doesn't even mean that, but it does mean that we get to sort of, in remembering that journey, that should impact now how we interact with people who are still on that journey.
Hey everyone, it's Kristen. Just wanted to take a moment to say thank you for tuning in. I hope that you're finding these messages helpful for you in your everyday life. That's what we're trying to do here, is gather around the idea that life is a gift and love is the point, and let's give ourselves ways to move forward in that in our own everyday world. So I wanted to take a moment to say thank you for being a part of this community. To those of you who have participated and given financially, we want to say thank you to you. Everything that we do here happens because people make contributions. People say, I value this place, I want it to exist for me and for other people, and so I'm going to support it. And so we just want to say how grateful we are that you do that. And for those of you who maybe haven't had a chance to contribute yet, we would ask you to consider maybe doing so. If you find this place beneficial, if you find these messages helpful for you, then consider joining us in that way. You could go to eastlakecc.com to make a contribution. And we just always are thankful for the people who want this place to exist. So thanks again for tuning in. Let's get back to the message.
Whenever somebody talks about the problem of evil, going like to theological roots, I love anytime people bring up there's still the problem of good. Like, if everybody is intrinsically broken, how come there's so much good and beautiful things in the world too, right? So I love your perspective. Thanks for sharing on that.
Yeah.
Okay, I want to talk about my favorite part of your message, the part I think that was most impactful to me, which was your prescriptive actions and intentions versus descriptive actions and intentions. And I just want to be like, thank you, thank you, because I cannot add one more thing to my life. And I can't download another app for meditation. I cannot take yoga. I literally get so overwhelmed with the thought of needing to buy a journal or do those things that you mentioned. And but what I was doing was just being like, oh, I don't have time for that. And I was doing nothing. And so when you talked about taking the regular things that you do in your life and turning them to have this like set intention with them, or how can they remind you to set an intention? I just was like, it just surprised me, and I'm so thankful for it, because I just can't do another thing. So I think I just want to say thank you for that.
Oh yeah, well, thank you. It's something a friend and I had talked about and we're trying to incorporate it in our lives probably like 10 or 11 years ago, which is weird to say because it felt like literally yesterday, but I guess that's how it happens. But it's been so helpful across all kinds of platforms. Like, you know, again, I think with intention, with the way our lives are set up, and it's not about labeling like, oh, it's good or it's bad, we have too much, but it just is, right? This is where we are. And so how do we find the best approach to fit where we are, right? And what's true now. And what's true now for most of us is like, no, we don't have an extra 75 minutes that we're just gonna like pull out of the air to like, you know, transcend space and time, you know, but like I could probably get just like a few deep breaths out before I get out of the shower, like, you know. And so start there. Like, we don't have to get wild, right? And it actually doesn't take, you know, I think I'm always surprised, like it doesn't take that much to just reconnect.
It doesn't. I was laughing because I was like, I wish I showered every day, but I don't. And when I do, my kids are like banging on the door, and I'm like, okay, the shower thing's not going to work for me if it needs to be a regular thing. But I was like,
find a different one.
And I was like, I do have coffee every morning. Or tea every morning. And then I got like super into it because I'm like, I use a French press. So I'm like, okay,
oh yeah.
Yes, right. So I was like, okay, what do I want to come out when I'm like push.
Yeah.
Yes.
I got like super meditative with it.
Yes.
And so even like today, my kids were just wild. They were just crazy wild. And I was like, I'm not even going to be able to do that one thing. And then for whatever reason, they ended up upstairs. And I was like, oh my gosh, I can press my coffee.
Yes.
And I did. And I was like, okay, when I get pressed today, I just want patience and kindness to come out of me. And then I like held my warm cup of coffee and I looked down at it and I did just like a couple of deep breaths and that was it. But
yeah.
It was good. And so I'm hopeful to keep doing that because my life feels crazy. And so to take a few moments and have that feel like enough for now, it just always feels like I'm just not doing enough. And that's
what is that?
I don't know. It's not a good feeling to have. So
yeah. I love it. It's like even French press is like that's begging for some kind of ritual. You know what I mean? That's like begging for a meeting, like a shower, like a brushing teeth. These things are like asking for us to like, you know, assign meaning to me so I can be helpful to you. You know?
Yeah.
Like, okay, yeah, I can do that.
Peter, are you gonna do one?
Well, I just have to make a quick comment. Brittany, so my wife Brittany, we have 4 kids, and I just want to make you feel normal, Kristen. Showering every day is challenging when kids are beating down the door and work from home and all the different things, getting out the door for school. But Brittany came across a meme during COVID, and it said, "Whenever I take a shower, we call it like it's such a special occasion, we call it a spa day." And so like that's what a shower is for a mom. It's like spa day. And so anyways, we have this ongoing joke that when Brittany gets to take a shower, it's a spa. We call it a spa day. So anyways, I just want to make you feel normal.
I reject
for
that.
me,
I reject
yeah,
that.
exactly.
That is not
No, I'm not saying it's a good thing. I'm just wanting you to know, like, your pain is real, and we feel it in our household too. But as far as things that I think rituals that come to my mind, I do love the shower idea. I have figured out because I had been working home from COVID or during COVID, and even before COVID, that like working out and going like to do an exercise outside the house with my kids wasn't an option. It was like a 2-hour exercise, and that was a huge ask of my family for something that I don't really like to do, which is exercise. Like I'm going to take 2 hours of my time and my wife's time to go be miserable anyways. So I figured out this work from home workout thing that takes a whole lot less time. And so I'm ascribing some extra meaning to that is where I'm going to use that time.
Yeah. I love that. Yeah. I mean, I'm not going to pretend to know, like kids are an ultimate game changer. So, I mean, shout out to just everyone who made it through 2020 and 2021 with their children intact. That feels like a win in itself. So,
well, I feel like everybody, I mean, I think that transitions to the next point I want to talk about, which was like the ping pong ball thing. It doesn't matter if you have kids or if you live by yourself. The reality is the world that we live in. And I'm not sure if it's because of the internet and because we're now so aware of everything that's going on, or just if there's more things going on. I don't know. But I do feel like no matter what your situation in life is, everybody has that feeling of trying to push down all the things that are vying for your attention and your effort. And, I appreciated your comment of just like letting them just come up and seeing what's there. And I guess I'm curious with like what happens then when you just let them all rise up. How do you sit? I mean, I appreciated you saying about how you can't be passionate about everything. But like, how do you sit with Afghanistan and climate change and racism and politics and the economy and all of those things? How, like, what is your approach to just not getting overwhelmed with it all?
Yeah, well, first I'll say I have not found a foolproof method of this. I think like everyone have been very frequently overwhelmed with it all off and on for 2 years. So I'll throw some thoughts out there, but this is not coming from like and let me tell you how I have mastered the art of not becoming overwhelmed.
Fair. It's a good disclaimer.
Disclaimer. Trial by error here. But I think that and what I've been doing lately, it feels like, yeah, the ping pong ball analogy just it resonated so much even with me, right? Because sometimes just everything feels so urgent, and not that it's not important, but actually asking yourself, like, is this urgent to my, like, we had this is going to come back, I promise, but we had this conversation last night at dinner with a friend, and we were talking about, I was like, man, I feel like truly sometimes the best thing that we can do for the world is become the most ourselves. And in that, I think we will have this impact. And not that I don't care about certain things, but like, so I think about something like the civil rights movement, right? And I think about how it took thousands of people coming at all different angles from their vantage point of life to make that movement happen. Everyone wasn't an MLK. Everyone wasn't a Malcolm X. Everyone wasn't Rosa Parks, but everyone was coming from their own vantage point. And I think, you know, I'm not unrealistic thinking, like, I'm not about to be out here and like fix climate change, cure cancer, end racism, be a good wife, be a good aunt, take down the patriarchy and capitalism, and then also like rescue 7 dogs a week. You know, like I'm not gonna do it. And so I think in trying to sit with myself and saying, like, who are you? How do you connect with that? What does that mean for the way you interact with the world? I think we'll be good and we'll be healing when we come from a whole and healing place. And then I think we have to figure out how to manage the other things. Like, I don't know what to do about what's going on in Afghanistan. And so how do I navigate that with, you know, I don't know what to do about, like, you know, just being on social media and finding out that like someone's mom's cousin's friend like has cancer, and I'm like, can I take that? You know, it almost feels like when it's like a more real life experience of like when you're checking out the store and then like you swipe your card and they're like, would you like to add $1 for kids? And you're like, no, I don't like kids. You know, like, no, totally. I'm like, it's, you
There's
know,
only
like
one correct answer.
Yes, right. Like, with the people on the street are like walking up and they're like, hey, do you care about, you know, the earth? And I'm like, no.
Not today.
Right. And so I don't know, to be honest, but I'm trying to figure out the balance of, like, I want to be engaged. I want to be an engaged, passionate, and aware person. Like, I don't want to just ignore all these things going on and pretend like, oh, is something happening? And if, you know what I mean? I don't want to do that. And at the same time, I want to recognize what I have, and where it needs to go. If it, I don't know. It's tricky, and I haven't figured it out. And I think it's the ping pong ball analogy is what I do when it's like full. I need to let go, and then I feel good. And then, to be honest, then they start building up again, and then I'm like, oh, again, they're like, oh, I need to let go. And okay, it's these 4 things. These are my, you know, all of a sudden you look up and they're there again. So, you know, I think a lot of us are figuring that out right now. And I don't know the exact formula, but I think our, again, intention is key.
I like what you said there too, just about that the ping pong ball analogy is something that is going to happen multiple times, right? This is an ongoing thing that we're going to be managing. We have to manage our attention is kind of what I'm hearing you say, right? Because like ultimately there's a constant, they come in waves, right? Life events, external events, family events, right? Like there's emergencies in family, there's health issues, right? We face things, right? And like just becoming more comfortable with, like, I'm going to become overwhelmed by this, and I'm going to have to then let go of my control or my illusion of control, and then decide what to prioritize. I guess I find some comfort in that, knowing that, like, that's not something I have to solve for once. And like, if I don't do it correctly, like I suck at it. No, I need to like do this on ongoing practice. So I find that perspective helpful.
Yeah. And it will look different in every season, right? Like my immediate family went through like a huge shift this past year. And I remember thinking like, I don't know what's going on. in pop culture. I don't know what's going on in the world. Like, I am deep in these people right now. And, you know, as that begins to level out, and now I'm like, no, yeah, I do want to get involved sort of here or there. Like, it's, you know, I think sometimes people imagine like, oh, here are the 4 important things in my life, and I just juggle them constantly, and they're all the same size. Like, whenever people talk about like looking for balance, I'm like, balance is such a myth, because balance implies that things are valued at the same, right? So like work life, like, no, my work and life are not valued the same. One of those is I value way higher. I'm not trying to find balance. I'm trying to find more life, less work. And I'm not like, that is just a fact. Like, and so if you know, you have these big rocks and it's like, oh, my family needs attention. Like, sorry, all these things, you're not going to get it. I'm not trying to find a balance. I'm trying to navigate like what needs the most weight and attention, and I want to give it, right? And that will look different every freaking season. And so, you know, part of the answers, I think, again, just to like beat a dead horse, which I hate that analogy. I can't even believe I just said it. Like, coming out of my mouth, I was like, why do people say that? Who would beat a dead horse? But just to restate, so much of it comes back to like our own self-awareness. What can I hold right now? Where can I have impact? What's important to me? Like, I'm so sorry I haven't posted about this thing, you know, going on with the California recall, but you know, I was having a hard conversation. You know what I mean? It's we get to live in our real lives.
Yeah.
This was a practice that someone shared with me about just anxiety, and I can see it kind of applying to this too, where like the idea is that you let something be a balloon and you're holding on to this thing, and you can just decide to like let it go and have it just kind of not something that you have to hold on to. And I'm not saying like racism is this balloon that I'm just going to let go and not care, but there are a lot of ping pong balls, things in my life that I could do that with. If it's like, oh, I'm feeling weight about this comment that was made on, you know, an Instagram post or something like that. Those are things that I can choose to just be like, oh, I just am not going, I'm going to choose to just not care about that.
Yeah.
Because I think there are so many things that are worth caring about, that one of my struggles is letting go of the things that are not worth it. So
yeah, and that takes examining, right?
Yeah.
And even with racism, I do a lot of like anti-racism work, and I do trainings and stuff for organizations, and I use the same prescriptive versus descriptive analogies for people's anti-racism work, because the same thing happens, right? Like, you know, last summer you were like, what? There's racism. I'm gonna, you know, every day I'm gonna do blah, 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 blah. 2 months later, you're like, I stopped, you know. It's like, no, do the same thing. Do you drive to work every day? Can you just reimagine that towards anti-racism? So what podcast are you listening to? Add one in there about, this is slow. Life is slow. Life is a slow burn. Yeah. And so with all of these things, even with the Afghanistan example, I was with friends, we had dinner a few weeks ago, and you know, everyone's like, what do you think? And I was like, I'm not even gonna pretend to know anything. Like, I'm starting at zero. And so then we all sent an article, and we said like, oh, let's read these few articles, and then like next week dinner, like, this is how life actually works. It's very slow, and in that between now and then, one of my friends got in a huge fight with their boyfriend, and we, you know what I mean. So it's like you can care about things, and they cannot have an immediate fix, and that has to be okay. And that sucks too, though, you know, because I love immediate fixes, but
they're fantastic.
Yeah.
Okay, I want to be conscious of time, but I also want to just circle back to kind of the main point that you were talking about, which is technology and the role that it plays in our life. And you talked about connection versus consumption.
Yeah.
And I guess I appreciated that, because I want to remind myself, like, am I using this to connect, or am I just consuming? But I guess I was thinking, like, sometimes I like to just consume.
Yeah.
Sometimes I like to just scroll and read about celebrities or, you know, the things that don't matter. And now I'm questioning myself and being like, that's not a connection. Is that okay? I don't know. What do you think about that?
If you're vibing with it, then vibe with it. I think the connection versus consumption is important when we're interacting, right? When we're commenting. Oh, I live for like just going like 97 weeks deep on Oprah's thing just to find that one video of her like coming out of her garden with all of those. I live for it. It means nothing. It's just consuming. I don't know her. Oprah doesn't know me. But I think the line is when we start actually interacting with people. Oh, well, they commented, I'm going to, and it's like, wait, let's chill, But there's always a place for like, what?
Consuming.
What did Kim Kardashian wear to the Met Gala?
I'm curious on that. No, I thought that was helpful, that kind of distinction between connection and consumption. I'm assuming your goal or like your point with that, or the primary goal would be to like just be conscious of how you're using the tool, and recognizing if you are externalizing or you're looking for this tool to bring internal validation and worth to who you are at your core. Is that kind of what I'm hearing you say is the primary thing to kind of keep in mind there?
Yeah, for sure. I think to Kristen's point, there's always moments where I'm like, why am I watching Marvel Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. for the fourth time? Because I just am.
Yeah.
That's just a part of the world we live in.
I think kind of my last question for you, you talked about in the end, you said, what I'm reaching for is myself. And at the beginning, you also said, I want to get curious with myself.
Yeah.
And I got kind of stuck on that for a minute. And I guess I wanted to see, do you have any like specific ways that you've learned to be curious? Because I don't think curiosity and curiosity with ourselves is very common. I think it's more like judgment. This is how I feel right now. And then we move on. So how do you facilitate curiosity?
Well, I'm not super good at it. I'm an Enneagram 7. So, but I actually have a note in my phone that I'm like, why did I say that? And then I just try to go down why do I feel that? Then I just try to go down the road. That is not like a very thought out thing, but, I feel like it's just intended. It's just a follow-up question of why. Like, you have a wild thought or moment and like, and I'm like, why did I do that? And then you start to learn, and then you start to make wild connections. Like, I've made connections that I'm like, did I do that because I thought that and that's connected to that, and then you're like, whoa. And I think it's just, that's a language I got from my wife. Sometimes she'll always, come out of a day or moment, she'll be like, I just made a connection, She's like, I think this because of this. And we're like, whoa, and it's like it's not, it's fun. It's like I don't know, instead of being like, like, why do you get so upset? Like, why am I so mad? Or like, I need to just stop being, it's like, no, well, why? What did that remind you of? My therapist, she always is like, I wonder what that reminds you of whenever I like talk to you about something I'm feeling. And I'm like, such a good question. Like, I made a connection early in the pandemic of like feeling, the last time I had felt that was like when we were closeted and why it was impacting me so emotionally. And I was just like, that was a really important connection for me to make, because I was like, why am I losing it? And things like that are just, so valuable. Like, again, it's just reaching for yourself is just the most valuable thing we could do.
I love that thought too, because I think you probably wouldn't be curious, going back to one of our previous points about humans are intrinsically good, right? So if you're intrinsically bad, you probably don't want to know. Like, you don't want to dig and you don't want to find out. Like, I'm just going to learn more about how wretched I am. But if there's this foundational place of I have goodness in me, like that curiosity, you can be a little bit less scared to look internally. So I love that curiosity piece. That was helpful.
Yeah, I love that.
Well, gosh, again, I wish you were here in person. I wish we could just like keep talking over dinner and hang, and that you could be with the Eastlake crew, but sometime.
One day.
But thank you so much for just processing and sharing your process with us, both Peter and I were like, let's ask Brit Barron.
Yeah.
To tell us, like, what has she been thinking about life these days? So we just appreciate your time, your effort, and your involvement with that. So thank you.
Yeah, thank y'all. Super grateful for you too, and can't wait till we're back together in person.
All right, we'll see you soon.
Thank you for joining us. To make a donation, head to eastlakecc.com/donate.